Welcome back to the Charles River as we are set for the men's heavyweight varsity 8, and we will take a look at the boatings for this men's varsity 8 and the Adams Cup on the line. For Navy, it'll go as follows. It'll be Matthew Cantoso. That'll be the Cox. James Pushner will be the stroke. James Sills will be in the 7th spot. John Lamb will be in the 6th position. Andrew Knoll in the 5th. Jacob Koslowski will be in the 4th position. Griffin Dunn in the 3rd. Alec Gould will be in the 2nd. And MJ Duffy will be the bow for the Navy midshipmen. And for the Penn Quakers, as we take a look at their varsity 8, it'll be JP Kim as the Cox. Bart Roovers will be the stroke. Eric Wicks will be in the 7th position. Jay Hoffmeister in the 6th. Cannon Williams, the 5th position. Patrick Farkas will be in the 4th. Nicholas Ems will be in the 3rd position. Gabe Blanchard in the 2nd. And Christopher Schumann will be the bow for the Penn Quakers. And for the Harvard Crimson, their varsity 8, it'll be George Cousins. That'll be the Cox. Clark Dean will be the stroke. David Ambler will be in the 7th position. Dow DeGraff will be in the 6th position. Lars Lorch will be in the 5th position. Liam Corrigan will be in the 4th. Patrick Adams the 3rd. Arthur Doyle will be in the 2nd spot. And Kenny Coplin will be the bow for the Harvard Crimson. So now the Adams Cup set to go, and we see our first push from these boats.
Yep.
We are underway.
This was a win for the Harvard First Varsity a year ago, winning by nearly 7 seconds over Penn and by nearly 10 seconds over Navy, as the Crimson were the only team to break 6 minutes in that race a year ago. But this is a Harvard First Varsity that has not been defeated this season. They picked up wins in Varsity 8 races over Cornell, George Washington, Brown, and Princeton. Harvard consistently been ranked number 3 in the polls, and they rank here number 3, Navy number 12, Penn number 11. And the Crimson certainly would love to keep that unbeaten record here alive in their first race at home this season. They'll have one other one coming up in the Charles next week against Northeastern.
And you remember what they did against Brown, a very competitive race down the stretch against the Brown Bears, in which they were able to hold them off for the Stein Cup. Bears made a big push late for that race, but Harvard, who led the entire way, was able to finish that one off strong.
Yeah, I should say it's their second home race of the year, obviously, but you see Harvard is on the left side there, and it looks like Navy is on the right side with Penn right between the two. We'll get a better idea coming up, but it's a little bit tough to tell from where we are right now, but it appears that Harvard has pulled out in front thanks to a very, very strong start. Moving a lot of water here at the beginning of this race. Win over Cornell last time out was by 9 seconds. Cornell was ranked number 10 in the country. George Washington ranked number 15. They beat the Colonials by 18 seconds. And that win over Brown was their tightest of the season to this point. Just a 1.3 second differential between the Bears and the Crimson.
How about this? Since they started on April 6th in that race against Cornell and George Washington, they have yet to see a team that is unranked so far this year, and anyone that is ranked outside that top 15 has also not been seen by Harvard as well. Of course, this Harvard team coming in very impressive, sitting 3rd in the last poll that was put out. And now, Alex, we are seeing that Harvard has taken a commanding lead here early. And again, though, this is something that Brown tried a strategical move against Harvard. We saw them give a late push, and you mentioned that almost barely a second differential between Brown and Harvard. Right now, the Crimson have really started to pull away from the pack, and Navy looking like they have a bit of a lead on Penn as we approach the bridge here.
Yeah, Harvard's staying at a pretty consistent stroke rate. They've been around 36, 37 here ever since they settled into the second 500. And you've got Penn, which has been around the 33, 34 mark. Navy is not far from Harvard in terms of its stroke rate, but obviously didn't get off to the quick start that the Crimson did, and been able to open up a very good-sized lead. And for this Penn team, they're coming off an appearance against Yale and Columbia, where they finished right between the Bulldogs and the Lions. They were about 17 seconds behind Yale, which again is nothing to sneeze about. Yale is the #1 team in the country, and it's going to be a really fun race when Harvard and Yale go head-to-head, of course, in just over a month's time. But then Penn beat Columbia by less than half a second. Penn also finished right between Princeton and Columbia 2 weeks ago, falling to the Tigers by about 5 seconds. And they faced Northeastern a couple of weeks before that and lost by about 3 seconds. They've been in second place in every race they've been in. It's going to be quite the task to try and finish in second place against a solid Navy team, which is just one spot behind Penn here in the rankings.
Mention a solid Navy team that saw themselves just about 2 seconds behind Syracuse in the Varsity 8 race last weekend. And they did defeat Cornell in that as well. And here we see a couple of teams start to come past that construction here, and Navy, team that we first see, and Penn looking like they're a couple of lengths behind. You see Harvard off to your left.
Yeah, even though Harvard, the last one to emerge, we saw when they went under the bridge that Harvard had a significant lead against Navy. Not an overwhelming lead, not certainly one that couldn't be made up. And I think you see Navy trying to make that push on Harvard. Crimson looking to dig deep in the second part of this race. Again, the Adams Cup is on the line here.
And again, we saw this happen just a few weeks ago in the Stein Cup. Brown made a late push, almost was able to edge out Harvard. It looks like Navy trying to do the same here.
Yeah, but Harvard still is in front. This was a trophy named after Charles Francis Adams, who was a Harvard graduate, and he was also Secretary of the Navy. So obviously an appropriate cup to bear his name, one that features both Harvard and Navy, of course.
Right now, Harvard still in front, as you can see there. And Penn falling behind in the third spot. Navy trying to continue their push, but look at the strokes by Harvard. A terrific push here late. And the Crimson starting to pull away as we approach the finish line.
Yeah, this is just a really clean race here. Crimson have upped it up to about 40 strokes per minute, so they've gone into their reserve at the right time. And look at this dominating margin between Harvard and Navy out of the picture here. Crimson are not letting up. They know they've got bigger sights ahead, but they can be very, very proud of the way they put this race together, retaining the Adams Cup. They've won it every single year. It's been contested this century. And how about this finish? Penn trying to come back on Navy.
Navy with a late push towards the finish line, and they will hold off Penn. But the Adams Cup will stay with the Crimson. The Harvard Crimson have won the Adams Cup over top of Navy and Penn. And we'll take a look here, Alex. Look at those strokes to end it for the Harvard Crimson. An impressive showing by Harvard late.
All these guys in the boat knew that they had a dominating victory, did not let up at all. Again, training for the big races coming on up, but they are very happy to claim another victory and stay undefeated on the season.
The #3 team in the country living up to their name as they take home the Adams Cup. We will step aside. Harvard, the winner of the Adams Cup. We'll have more for you right here on the Ivy League on ESPN.